Hello, Pickle Peeps. Thank you for joining me for another video. I am your host, Voodoo Pickles, and today we are going to be talking about Kisses from Hell. So I originally bought this book because Kelly Armstrong was an author I knew of, and I was reading some of her stuff at the time, so I was like, oh, pick it up from like a local bookstore. But this book was truly inspired by the whole mid-early 2000s scene. So let me set the scene for you. In 2005, the popular music at the time was We Belong Together by Mariah Carey, Holla Back Girl from Gwen Stefani, and Let Me Love You from Mario. Everybody was wearing trucker hats, skinny jeans, Uggs, and those scozzes that Stan talks about. And a book was released called Twilight. This would change forever. The romanticy wasn't really a thing at that time. Romance novels and how people saw vampires and werewolves, and it changed a lot. 2005 was when Twilight was released. I read all of the books from Twilight in 2008 after the last one was released in 2008. And I did not see what the hubbub was about. It was not my jam. It was not my jam. I did not care for it at the time, but a lot of people did. Enough it made movies, and now there's like a whole other shoot-off series from it and everything. It's whatever. It's whatever you want to be into. That's fine. I'm going to go read my other stuff over here. But I bought this book. This was published in 2010. It's Kisses from Hell, and the Kisses series, they have a bunch of different ones, are all little short romance stories. These are YA, and they feature prominent authors, I guess, specific to that genre. I picked it up from a used bookstore because it had Kelly Armstrong on it. Kelly Armstrong, I was enjoying. I think I read a couple of her books at the time. And so I picked up that one. But after reading it, which I didn't read it until last year for the very first time, like, it's just been on my bookshelf forever. I did not read it till last year, and yeah, it was heavily influenced by Twilight. So if you like Twilight, or you're just like anything like that, you'll probably like these short stories. There was one short story, maybe like 1.5 short stories I enjoyed. But let's talk about them. So this book has 5 different stories in it, each written by a different author. The first one is called Sunshine by Rachel Mead, and this follows 2 vampires. And in this world, there are 2 different types of vampires, the Morori and the Strigoi. And the Morori are the more like high-class type of vampires, the vampires that you see in movies and everything. Like the rich Victorian vampires look like humans, all of that stuff. The Strigoi are a more primitive version of vampires, and they've been attacking the other type of vampires so much that the other type of vampires are kind of dying out. And so because they're dying out, the teenagers of the high-class vampires are being pushed to marry as quickly as they can and pump out as many kids as they can to save their species. And we start off the story on a yacht because, again, the traditional type of vampires, the high-class vampires, they're super uber rich. They just finished graduating high school, so they're on this huge party yacht, and they're going to a private island to go have a after graduation party before they all go off to get married and have a bunch of babies. And on this ship, we have the prince of this area, who is super like big and super brooding, and his name is Eric. And he was told by his father that he has to marry as soon as possible, to have children so that there can be an heir for the throne after him, and to help repopulate the vampires. And he's not too happy about that. And he was told to marry his girlfriend Emma. She's also a high-class vampire, super uber rich. She's like a kind of like a duchess or a almost a princess. Like she's that's the type of person she is. And his dad has told him, you will marry this girl, it will happen super soon, and this is just what's going to happen about it. And while they're traveling to this party island, they are attacked by the Shigori, except they don't defend themselves because they're super uber rich. They have security teams called Dampires, which are half human, half vampires, and they guard the high class vampires. So when they're attacked, the Dampires attack the Strigoi and kill them all off. And after it happens, people on the boat are just like, oh no, did you see what happened? That was so crazy. And Emma, Eric's girlfriend, is just like, they almost got me. Did you see that? They almost killed me. That was such a rush. And they all go around because they're teenagers. They're teenagers. And they all go around excitedly talking about the attack that happened, except Eric. Eric is upset. One, that Emma would say they almost got her, because they most certainly did not almost get her, because they were on the back of the ship. Not that he was going to protect her, but he was very confident the Dampires would. But because his mother was attacked by Strigoi and died. And so he's annoyed with Emma and all the other people, and he just kind of wanders off on the yacht. And then he meets Rhea. Rhea is super quiet. She's off to the side, and she's not excited about the attack. She's scared of boats. Like, she doesn't like boats, so she's really hanging on to the railing. Eric approaches her because she does not seem excited about what happened, and he's like, I kind of know her. She's like the poor kid in the rich high school, like super quiet but just kind of off by herself. She's the loner. And so he stands and he talks to her, and they kind of joke a little bit, but she's like, this must be really hard for you. I'm so sorry about your mother. Because she says that and brings it up, he's just like, oh, nobody has ever showed interest in me like that, showed pity for me or sympathy for me losing my mother, and that just hits me in the feels. And he's like, she's really pretty. I really like her hair. And so they get off on the boat at the party island, and they go, and Erica is trying to find her because she was like, she was really interesting. She was just so interesting because she was not excited about the attack, and she talked to me about my mother. Where is she? I want to talk to her. And he ends up running into one of the jock vampire people at this super rich school named Steven. And he sees Steven talking to Rhea, and Eric's annoyed that she's talking to him because he's like, she's too good for him. Why would she be talking to him? He's just a jock. He's just a meathead. I could give her a good conversation. So he's annoyed by that, while he also has his girlfriend hanging on his arm trying to get his attention. And Rhea is the poor kid at the rich school. And she is engaged to Steven because Steven will provide her a better life because he's rich. So if she marries rich, she will be super happy, even though they don't really love each other, because he's always been like a brother to her. So she's like, this is going to be weird, but this is the only way I can better my situation. And so as a part of them like being engaged, informally engaged, they go to this party island. And that's why Rhea is there with Steven. And then Eric is super annoyed with this. He's just really upset. Like, she's going to marry that asshole, that jerk, because Steven likes to party. Steven's like the typical jock in the thing, except he's super sweet and super nice to Rhea. And he's always been there to protect her because he knew her since she was a kid. And she knows that side of him. And so Eric is super annoyed with it. And then he ends up stalking Rhea around this party island and just leaves his girlfriend there. And he's like, yeah, you know what? You can just go off and go party yourself. It's fine. You have friends, right? And Rhea does not like partying. She does not like drinking alcohol or doing any type of that thing. She just kind of wants to be alone with a book, and, you know, because she's not like the rest of them at the party. And so she tries to get away from the people at the party. And then these high-class vampires are fed once a night, I think once or twice a night, by the Dampires. The Dampires, when they packed the party boat going to the party island, they had a bunch of humans that are kept as feeders. And they had these humans and they kind of put them in this one room at this huge party house mansion thing. And each of these humans has their own little cubicle. And once a day, they ring a bell, and all of the high class vampires come in, and then they sign out one of the humans, and they go to that cubicle and feed on that human. That's their whole system. That's their whole system on how they're fed. During one of the times when it's feeding time, Eric gets close to Rhea, and he's like cutting in line, just trying to get really close to her. She's uncomfortable, but she's like, oh, he's kind of cute. And he's just like, he's there, he's trying to talk to her. And when they get their turn up to the person with the clipboard with the list of names, she gives the name of the human that she wants to feed from. And Eric tells her, don't do that. It's a terrible idea. You should always change up the human you feed from, or else the human will develop feelings for you. And she's like, you know what? Maybe next time I'm really comfortable with this one human. And so I'm going to feed from this one human and everything will be fine. And they go off, they feed, and later there's a huge party. And after they're done feeding everything, and during that party, Eric wants to go find Rhea to go flirt with her some more. And she told Steven that she doesn't want to be around the party, so she's just going to go for a walk around the island. She's like, maybe like a little hike, clear her head. And she told Steven to stay there so he can enjoy the party. And Eric goes around and he can't find her in the mansion. He can't find her at the party spots. So he's like, she's missing. She's totally gone. She's missing. And she goes to the vampires and she tells them that somebody's missing. He goes to the human pens and sees that there's a vampire there that is dead, and he looks at the rosters, everything, he sees that a human is missing. And so he raises the alarm and he goes out to search for her. And the human that was missing is the one that she was feeding from. So he's like, no, I told her this would happen. If only she would have listened to me. And so he gets a feeling in his feels and he goes to a cliff because there's this giant dramatic cliff on this island. So he's like, I have a feeling. I think it's over there. I'm going to go straight over there while I tell everybody else to go around. And they're all listening to him because he's the prince. And Rhea was kidnapped by the human because he fell in love with her, because she kept going back to him for feeding. He was like, no, I love you. I'm going to get us off this island and we will go off and live our happy love story off of this island. It's okay. We'll be on the run, but we will have each other and I will love you. And so this one human overpowered a upper class vampire. One of the vampires kidnapped her and he took her up to this cliff because on this cliff there is a cave. And so that's where they're at. And this human's not right in the head, obviously. He's been kept in this pen like pretty much his whole life. And so he's a little crazy. And he's saying that we'll be safe. I'll protect you and I can feed you still, so you don't need to have any food, and we'll be in love, and that's what's going to go on. Eric goes up there and he sees both of them there, and he tries to fight with the human, but the human is kicking his ass. And right before Eric's about to lose, Rhea takes up a big rock and she hits the human on the back of the head because he's hurting Eric. And then Eric is able to push him off the cliff after she hits him on the head. And then they hug and then they kiss. And then they're both like, let's get married. Let's get married. After knowing each other for a day, let's get married. And he's like, yes, I will tell my dad that I'm not going to marry this princess duchess person over here to, help our royal line. I'm going to marry her because she has pretty hair and she's pretty and she's sympathetic. So I'm gonna marry her. And he was like, we'll just tell the other people that we're dating that they can go off and date each other and we'll be married and it'll be fine. They'll love it. And that's how that story ends. So that was that story. I was like, Maybe it's just because I'm not a teenager who enjoys Twilight. I was just like, that's stupid. But yeah, that first story was pretty stupid. What I did enjoy was that there was two types of vampires. I really enjoy like the primitive type of vampires, like 30 Days of Night with Josh Hartnett. So I like those type of vampires. Those are really crazy and awesome, and I really enjoyed those two types. The actual story had no interest for me, but again, I'm not a teenager, so it wasn't appealing. The second story was called Bring Me to Life by Allison Noel. This one follows Danica. Danica is accepted into a art school called the Sunderland Manor Art Academy. It is an academy in the UK, and she worked really hard to try and get into this art school, and she arrives from a plane, everything, and then when she gets off of the plane, grabs her luggage, there's like a creepy old man with a sign. And she goes to him, she's like, "Are you my driver?" And he's like, "Yeah." He grabs her stuff and he takes her to the manor. While they're on their way to the manor, we get backstory on Danica. So Danica's mom died when she was little. And her dad got remarried a few years ago, but he got remarried. And when he got married, her stepmom, she decided that she does not like her. Not that she doesn't like her stepmom. She decided that her stepmom doesn't like her and hates her. And so she went to go out of her way to do things to annoy her stepmother, even though from what we see in the book, her stepmom's been nothing but nice to her. And so she like picks the luggage specifically, just the opposite of what her stepmom's like. "Oh, well, this is nice. This is gonna work for what you need it to work, but it's also really nice and it's quality, and it's a little expensive, but we can afford it." And she's like, "No, I'm gonna go to a thrift store and get this, and I'm gonna repurpose this just to annoy you," type of stuff with her stepmother. And then her stepmom got pregnant, and they started having her stepmother and her father had a baby, and her stepmother stopped worrying about her as much because she had a baby. And Danica was an older teenager at the time. So she decided that her stepmom hated her and that her dad also hated her because he liked his wife and their new child. Like everything in the book, in this little story, there was nothing going on with the dad. The dad and the stepmom didn't mistreat her or anything. It reminds me of that old Snow White movie. I can't remember. If I can remember, I'll put a thing on it. But yeah, it reminded me of that. That was also a pretty good horror Snow White movie. And then she was really annoyed with that, and then right before she was debating on accepting the scholarship to this art manor school thing, and what sealed it for her was she walked in on her best friend and her boyfriend making out or hooking up. It doesn't really say, it just says she caught them together. And so she decided, yeah, I'm going. She just grabbed the earliest flight, didn't tell anybody, and just hopped on a plane and left. And while they're getting closer to the manor, the fog is coming in super thick that she can't see any part of the roads or anything around her. And the creepy guy tells her that the fog comes in, and it comes in every year, and it slows down other people from getting to the manor for a day or two, so she'll probably be the only person there. And don't worry, it's normal. Don't freak out. And when she gets there, she is introduced to Violet. Violet is the housekeeper, and so she takes Danica around the house. She kind of shows her around without showing her around. And Danica is comparing it to the condo that her dad and her stepmother live at, and she was just like, ugh, her stepmom, Nina, hates me so much, and she came between me and my dad, and she just wants to hurt me. And that's what she's thinking while this housekeeper is showing her around. They get to the room where Danica's going to be staying at, and Violet is like, "All right, you must be hungry. Would you like some food?" She's like, "Yeah." And she gives her a bunch of sausages on a plate, which at first I thought was weird, but then I'm like, UK? Yeah. So she eats the sausages and immediately falls asleep. When she wakes up, she's like, "Where are my clothes? Where are my luggage?" And they're like, "Oh, we haven't gotten your luggage yet." And she's like, "Well, I'm pretty sure that the driver dude put them in the trunk, right? And she's like, "Oh no, no, they're gonna be sent here, but they just haven't gotten here yet." And she's like, "Okay, that's odd." And Violet tells her that there's no students here, the teacher's here, nobody's here. It's just her here and them here. And so, because it's just them here, while they're waiting on her clothes to arrive, they're going to wash her current clothes. And then she gives her a really old dress. And so she can just wander around in the really old dress. And Violet keeps giving Danica sausages, and that seems to be all she's eating. And she's sleeping a lot, and she set up her easel, everything, so she's allowed to paint. But she's been sleeping a lot, and then she's been dreaming. In her dreams, she's seeing a man in a lot of reds and blacks, just this man, and she wakes up and she paints what she sees, and she's getting a little bit more frantic with it. She's losing time. But Violet just keeps bringing those sausages in, and she just keeps eating them, sleeping, dreaming, and painting, and then rinse, recycle, repeat. And when she wakes up from one of her dreams, as she wanders around, as she meets a boy her age, and he's wearing like tinted glasses. The way that they're described is like how Count Dracula is in the Keanu Reeves movie. That those are the type of glasses he's wearing, and those are the type that are described in the story. And he says his name is Bram because it's super imaginative. And they walk together, and he tells her that he's also a student at this school, and she's like, "Oh wow, that's so great." And Violet sees them walking around, and she's shocked to see them, and she's shocked to see them, and she's like stuttering, and she's trying to tell him to kind of get away from her, but he's like, "No." And so she's like, "Okay." So he goes around the house. They're exploring and everything. He flirts with her. She's digging it because she's like, he's super cute. And he's like, "Let's go outside. It's super foggy. It'll be fun. It'll be like playing a game." So she's like, "All right, let's go." They go out and they fall into some roses. And as they fall into some roses, he falls further into the roses and into a grave. And then the flowers start closing around them, and she gets scared and she passes out. And when Danica wakes up, Violet and the creepy man are there, and they help her walk down the stairs. They're just like, "Oh, we've been waiting for you." And as she's walking down the stairs, she sees the man that she's been painting. And he is in this like 1800s vampire-ish robe, and he tells her that they were together in a past life, and she was killed before he could turn her. And he tells her that in order for her to be turned into a vampire, she needs to freely give herself to him so he could turn her, and they can be together forever. So she starts to go to him, and he starts biting her neck. And then as soon as he starts biting her neck, Bram shows up, and he comes into the room, and Danica is super confused. And he tells her that yes, she is a reincarnation, but he was her husband, not his brother. And then it's like, "Brother, what?" And it's Lucian. They're twins. They look exactly the same. And he tells her that in her previous life, she was engaged to Lucian, but when he started coming around their house after they were engaged, after they were partying and everything, she fell in love with Bram. And then she and Bram ran off together. And they got married. They lived in this house, this manor. And right before he was about to turn her into a vampire, because Bram is also a vampire, Lucian was super upset, and he tried to kidnap her, but she ran from him, and then she fell and died. Because they lived in this manor, and he is the lord of this manor is tied to him, which is tied to her. So the manor was falling down and decrepit, but the more she remembered and the more she was painting, the stronger her older memories were becoming, and it revitalized the manor. And those two staff members, Violet and the creepy man, who I don't think is ever named in the story, start to become younger as well, because they were also their servants in the past to help save the manor, because Bram was gone. Like once she died, he just bounced. And so Lucian convinced the two servants to save themselves to save the manor and then themselves, to lure her there, so that he could turn her into a vampire. And because she would be immortal, the manor would be immortal, they would also have eternal youth and they can continue serving her. So that's why she came there. And so she runs to Bram, and then he starts to bite her, and I guess that pisses off Lucian, or he just kind of goes like no and disappears. And then she wakes up as a vampire, and he tells her that they live at the manor now, and then she's like, but what about my dad? And then she goes down this whole little thought process of that's okay. He doesn't care about me anyways. He won't even notice I'm gone because he has Nina. She was just like, oh, these sausages are really good. And then he starts laughing. He's like, oh yeah, we've been preparing you. Those are blood sausages, and that's like vampire blood in the sausages or something. So it's helping her like come into the process of being made a vampire. And that was that story. And again, just like, not my favorite. Not my favorite. I didn't really even have those type of feelings when I was a teenager that I remember. So it was weird reading that. I have kids who are teenagers, and I was just like, wow. I rolled my eyes a lot on that one. And then I was like, it was very ingenious using the Bram and the Lucian name. Like, okay. But that was that story. And the third story is called Above by Kristen Cast. And this is one of the stories that I really enjoyed. Just because of the world building was so odd. It was so weird that I really liked it. So in this story, we follow Rana. Rana is a creature from below. And in the below, which is underneath the ground, like legit below, they're in the cave systems and everything, she is considered a freak. Her skin is the wrong color, and she is abused and neglected, and she's just, nobody wants her there. And all she wants to do is go into the above. The only way to go above is I don't know if it's once a month or once a week, or I think it's like once a month or once a week. The men of her species go on the above to go hunting and to go scrounging for resources and materials, and they go up and they scrounge and they hunt and things. And she just wants to go up above so she can run, so she can just be away from the below, because that's how terrible her life is. And she goes to her mother and her father, and they finally agree to let her go, because they're like, at this point, nobody's going to marry her. Nobody's going to want her. She's just going to be a burden on us. So we might as well let her go and go be killed up there, and we won't have to worry about her anymore, because there are a species of creatures in the above that hunt those from below. They go at night or the day, but they agree to let her go, and she's super excited. She's like, yes, I'm going to go. And one of the people from the below, one of the men who has been her main bully, is telling her that he's going to kill her. He's going to get her in the above. So she just, once they get up there, she turns around from him and just runs as fast as she can away. But she does get caught into a trap. And she falls asleep in the trap because there's nothing she can do. And then she wakes up, and there's this person called Soul. And he moves like a praying mantis, and he captured her in the trap, and then he transports her to his home. And he tells her that she's safe. And Soul says that his kind is the kind that hunts the people from below, because they need to feed on them so that they can feel and have emotions, because they do not have emotions or can feel unless they're feeding off of other creatures. And so that's what they do. And they hunt them for the emotions and everything, and that's how they can create. But Rana is different. As soon as she's awake, she makes Soul feel. And he can feel, and he can create, and he can do all of these things just with her around, just by her presence. And when she touches him, he like has an explosion of feelings. And so he's telling her, you are safe here. I will protect you. But yeah, you can stay here as long as you want, because that was the whole reason that they were hunting those from below. And he was like, what is your name? And she tells him that she doesn't want her name because it doesn't match her anymore. And so he's like, well, rename yourself. You can be whatever you want up here. And she renames herself as Aurora. And they end up having a relationship. They end up kissing and they have sex. And then we cut back to her main bully from below, and he hates her so much, and he knows she got away. He knows that she's not dead. How does he know? We don't know, but he knows that she's alive and well, so he decides he's gonna hunt her down. So he leaves the caves from below, and then he goes and he tracks her down. He ends up finding her, and because it is the daytime, I believe the daytime, and Soul is asleep, he's able to catch her unaware. Like, there's nobody to stop him, there's nobody to save her, and he gets her, and he ends up carving the word freak into her cheeks on her face. And when Soul wakes up and he sees there's blood everywhere, and he finds her dead on there, and he sees her, and he has all of this sorrow, and he is just this outpouring of emotions. And then after the grief is gone, he just goes into a blind rage. And so he decides he's gonna kill all of the things down below, because how dare they. He goes and he finds out where their cave systems are, and he goes down there and he kills everyone. Everything. He destroys everything in the below. And he has the person who killed her tell him her name. And then he kills her, and then he leaves. And then he goes and walks away, and he's learning about sorrow, and he's just gonna go die alone in his grief. That one was a really big tone shift from the two stories before. That one kind of kicked me a little bit, and I was surprised by it. But the imagery that the person uses, what was her name? Kristen Cast. I've never heard of this author before, but I was definitely looking into more of it. She usually does co-authoring things. I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't mind reading more of that, because the way that this was written was so beautiful. It was one of the stories that I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this, and I copied this story into one of my notebooks just because I'm like, I like this one story. The language was beautiful. The fact that the two creatures were not human and were looking like something else, and the way that they were talking about emotions and everything, I enjoyed this story. And that one was just like, wow, yeah, I like that one. And the fourth story in this book is called Hunting Cat by Kelly Armstrong. And this follows a teenage vampire. In this world, vampires are more of a result of medical experiments. They're scientific experiments. They're made creatures, and most of them are. They're like more natural ones, but the human government figured out how to make vampires, and they started making them. And there was a class of teenagers that they started doing experiments on and made them into vampires. Those teenagers escaped the facility, and Kat is one of those teenagers. She has a vampire guardian now who is moving her from place to place to keep her away from falling back into the clutches of the humans, as well as trying to teach her how to be a vampire. And there's a whole council and hierarchy, and she's just trying to they're trying to find her place in it to make sure that she's not, killed. And they're traveling to New York, and she decides, you know what, I'm going to take the car and I'm going to go grab something from the store or a video store or whatever. She ends up driving, and she drives down the road, and somebody runs her off the road, and she gets kidnapped. And she wakes up in the back of this van. There's two other people there that were part of the experiment, and they're stuck in this thing, and they're trying to figure out how to break out. And there's something that blocks the vehicle, and that vehicle ends up going into the woods, and they're able to break out of the van. But they're stuck in the woods, and they don't really know what to do. So they try and figure out a direction to go, and it turns out that one of the boys is a plant. He was put into that group to try and find out more information about these vampires and see where more of them are at, to see if there's like a network of them, if they know where each other's at, so that they can be gathered up again and experimented on or doing whatever they're doing. And this boy is a half demon, and he is part of a mercenary group that's trying to find these kids. And Neil is one of the other guys they were traveling with. He gets behind Kat, and then he tries to shoot in her general direction to like kind of be like, I'm serious, get away from me, after they found out the guy was a plant. And they end up incapacitating everybody. Like there's this huge vampire dude who's like, Urgh. And between him and Kat, they're able to beat the half demons, and then they run away. They end up getting to a town. They call her guardian, and her guardian comes and picks them up, and she's talking about, can this guy come with us, because he's part of the program. And they call his guardian, or like, because his human guardians, because he was kidnapped as a human, and his human parent guardian people don't know that he's a vampire. So there's like, all right, we're gonna call them, let them know that you're safe, and then you're coming with us to New York, and we're gonna go to the council and see what's gonna happen with you. And that's the end of this short story. So this short story didn't feel like a whole story. It felt like you took out like half of a chapter of an already made story, like an already made book, and then just put it into this book. So it was very interesting, and I was just like, how did that happen? I want to know more. And I'm like, I end up going to buy another Kelly Armstrong book, but it was okay. It felt out of place. And the fifth short story in this book is called Lilith, and this is by Francesca Leah Block. And this one follows a geeky, nerdy kid who's in high school. He is just a nerdy, geeky kid, and he is always getting picked on. He's always getting bullied, and he's a loner and always by himself. And when he goes to school, after having some weird dreams, he meets this goth girl. Like, she just showed up at the school one day, and she's full goth outfit, makeup, everything, and she's just around the school. And she starts staring at him, and he's like, wow, she's really pretty, and I'd really like to talk to her. But he doesn't have the confidence to go talk to her, so he doesn't. But he's trying to be at places she is at. And after he sees her at school, he starts having dreams at night that she's coming into his room and like getting on top of him, and he thinks she's snuggling his neck. And he's like, that's just happening at night. And that's just like, so wow, she's so great. But she comes to him and she keeps telling him that there'll be more, that she'll come back later, that there'll be more. And so he's just going about his high school life, and he ends up going to a party, a high school party out in the middle of nowhere that all the kids are going to. And while he's at this party, his bullies are there, and before he can get away from his bullies, they catch him, and they take him to a secluded part of the area, and they're tormenting him, and Lilith stops them. And when Lilith stops them, he feels emasculated and gets upset with her. And they run off. The bullies run off, and he gets mad at her. They get into this little confrontation, and he leaves, she leaves, and then he feels really bad for telling her, for getting mad at her because she was just trying to help. And he's like, all right, I'll apologize to her the next time I see her. He doesn't see her at the school the next day, and he's like, oh no, must have made her really upset. And then that night she calls to him, and he just kind of goes, and he knows where she's at because she's putting it in his head, and he's just like, I'm just gonna follow where I'm going, and maybe I'll find her. And he finds her, and he's just like, here you are. I wanted to apologize. And she's like, I have a present for you. And she pulls out the two bullies, because they're like in this junkyard area, and she had them in the trunk of one of the junked cars. And she pulls them out, and she was like, today, Aunt, I have a surprise for you, a present for you. And he's like, what do you want to do? She's like, I want you to kill them. And he's like, no, I'm not going to kill them. What are you talking about? And she tells him that she is not a normal human girl, and that he's not going to be a normal human boy anymore, because she's going to change him. But in order to do that, he also needs to kill these bullies. So she turns him into a vampire, and they end up feeding on the bullies. And he's so happy. He's so super hyped. He's like, we're gonna go off and we're gonna live together and we're going to feed together and we're gonna be together forever. And he's like, how do we clean up this mess? The human bodies that are just human bits and pieces that are just around. And she tells him, don't worry, they'll take care of it. And she waves her hand, and a bunch of crows come down and they start like pecking at the remains. And so they're starting to walk away, and he's trying to plan the rest of their life together and where they're going to go and what they're going to do. And she's like, let me stop you there. He's like, what do you mean? And she's like, this is what we do. He's like, what are you talking about? And she was like, you're a really nice guy, but this isn't going to work. And he's like, what do you... Like, he's confused and he's getting heartbroken, but she's going through this whole breakup speech with him. And then she tells him this is what they do. That they go to a school, because they were all made as teenagers. They go to a school where other teenagers are, and they find... I don't know how she says it more nicely, but they go and find, like, the loneliest kid there. The kid is the most bullied, the one that people wouldn't miss, really. And they find that one kid, and they turn that one kid into a vampire, and they set them loose on the bullies, and to enact this weird form of justice on the town. And then when that town is like cleansed, I guess is a word to do that, they move on and they go and they find another person in another town, and they go and find that kid and they turn that kid into a vampire, and then they leave and they go and find another one, and or they go to a town, and they just kind of do this over and over again, but they don't stay together. She's like, we can never stay together. We are always alone, except for these days that we're making somebody else into a vampire. She's like, other than that, we're alone. We are loners. This is our life. And so she tells him all of this, and he is just... his head is swimming. He's not really sure what to think. And then she just disappears. And so he's really sad. He's really upset. But then at the same time, he's really happy to have all of this power, and decides to go start hunting people who are mean to him down to enact his form of justice. And that's how that story ends. That one was the shortest story in the book, I think. It's not a really thick book. Like... It's really not. It's only 262 pages, but it has the 5 stories in there. And it's not a thick book. It's 262 pages. I rated this a 3 out of 5. Like, some of the stories you guys can obviously tell I wasn't vibing with. They're not my jam. When the whole Twilight craze was happening, I read the books and then I got sad that I was just like, this is the thing. Like, okay, sparkly vampires, got it. I'm gonna go rewatch Blade. But that was me. That was me. I didn't enjoy the Twilight thing, but if you did, I think you'll definitely like some of these stories, and maybe look into some of these authors to read more into what they're writing if you like their writing style. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. If you would like to buy this book from your local bookstore, I'll put the link for that down in the description below. Also, where you can buy it through thrift books, used, and also if you're in the United States, where you can find your local library to see if they have this book as well, so you can request it through there or read it without paying for it. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. All the links for my socials will be in the description below, and I will talk to you guys later. Don't forget to do all the YouTube things, like, subscribe, all of that, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.